And good morning, Hoosier Nation, and welcome to another edition of Hoosier Morning After. This is Hoosier Morning After Bethune-Cookman. It's the only time you'll hear me say it in this episode. I'm going to call it BC from here on out because it took me a while to kind of figure out how to say that one. A little bit more difficult. But Indiana goes on last night to beat BC 101-49 in a game that got us all excited and made us very excited about IU basketball again, as if we weren't already, but up to the notch a little bit more. And before we get too much deep into it and everything like that, being the date and day that it is, I first want to say a special thank you to the veterans out there, the listeners that listen to this show, or if you have family members that are veterans, thank you very much for your service. I appreciate you, and thank you for your sacrifice. Thank you for your selflessness of serving this country and serving us overall. So thank you so much for what you've done. And if you're out there today, take a moment to thank them and just show them that you appreciate them if you see a veteran out and about. So thank you to those guys. But last night we had some fun basketball, guys. We had exciting things happening. We had IU clicking on all cylinders, and I don't want to say it too loud. I don't want to scare it. I don't want it to be a small little creature that's going to run back into the woods. But we made some baskets, guys. We made some baskets last night. IU shooting three-pointers, a lot of them at a high volume, 24 of them total, and also shooting free throws really well. We'll get into it a little bit deeper as we go on, but a very exciting game. Excuse me. A lot of contributions from a lot of different guys. And let me move it around and everything. With me, as always, of course, is Martha, the mop lady. Martha, give me your thoughts on last night's game.
Yeah, it was a lot like game one, right? Kind of got out to, maybe a little bit of a flat start, and again, the bench comes in and kind of gets us right real fast, right? They come in and are our spark plug. You mentioned shooting the ball, right? And I'm sure we'll talk about Miller Cobb a little bit, but it wasn't just him. But, a lot of the things we talked about leading up to the season in terms of better three-point shooting, depth, how are the freshmen going to play? Man, you've got to be really excited about what we've seen the first two games, and it continued last night.
Yeah, a lot of answers to things. And obviously the very biggest kind of storyline going into this season so far now has been that second unit. Last year, we used to honestly cringe when that second unit was going in, and we would talk many times about the drop-off of the second unit. And they would come in, and we had a decent lead from the starters, and then that would dwindle away. And not the case. Almost exactly opposite, I would argue, this year, where our starters have struggled. And then that second unit, including last night, has come in and been that injection of energy and excitement and a little bit extra defensive intensity on that side of the ball. And then last night, something that looked really great with the second unit and them dealing with the zone was the ball movement with them. Moving the ball around, getting better shots, getting more high percentage shots from that. You don't see that out of the starters sometime. I think I don't know if that's an argument towards we're keeping Tracy Jackson Davis kind of in his wheelhouse where he makes most of his shots and he's less likely to move around, but it's something that's interesting to see how much more movement happens when that second unit comes on. They're a lot less selfless and just the movement of it. What were your thoughts on the second unit?
Yeah, I mean, I look at the box score and if somebody would have told me before the game that Jalen Hood-Schifino and Xavier Johnson would go a combined 3 for 11 from the field and 1 for 6 from three-point range, I'd been like, man, this game might be a little bit closer than anybody likes. But it was never in doubt, and that's because of everything you just mentioned, the bench and their ability to come in and yeah, we hadn't seen a zone yet this season, but their ability and again the flatness that we started the game off, and you're like, okay, is this because of the zone? Are we going to struggle against this? What's this going to look like? And they came in and again were the ones that set us straight, set us right. They broke down that zone. You saw guys flash to the middle, find holes in the zone that you just mentioned. So yeah, that's been probably the biggest and most pleasant surprise to me, is just the ability of the bench to almost look like our starting five in terms of getting us right, getting us in the flow of the game, looking like our best unit, etc. So I've been really, really pumped about the way they've looked.
Yeah, yeah. And speaking of our guards, the way you said, I mean, yeah, they did struggle shooting and everything, but they did what guards needed to do in this game, and they both combined to have an amazing assist to turnover ratio of 14-5. I mean, that's what you want to see out of this. And then speaking on X, one of my many things that I wanted to see going into this game was Xavier Johnson just settling into the game and settling into this team and finding his place. And I think he found it a little bit more in this game. And where he really found it was on the defensive side. I mean, he locked in on the defense that we know X can achieve, and what we saw last year out of him. And he's a lockdown ball defender. I mean, it's amazing what he can do with that, and he just fights that razor's edge and just dares referees to blow the whistle. I mean, they're ready there at him to blow the whistle on him when he's on those ball handlers, but he does not give them the chance to actually blow that whistle. What did you see out of X's game last night?
I think it was a vast improvement from what we've seen, when you look at the exhibition games and when we look at game one. I think you hit the nail on the head. I think that, X's value, we've talked a lot about not necessarily needing to lean on him a ton, right? I mean, with the depth we have, with who we've got that's come back. So what does that mean, right? And, not trying to force it, but being that steady guy on the defensive end, being that quarterback of the squad on the offensive end, and you mentioned the assist to turnover ratio. That's huge, right? I think the first thing I did was look at, their combined, shooting, between him and Jalen Hood-Schifino. But you're spot on, right? He's finding the open guy. He's what we need X to be. And I thought that was when X isn't forcing things, I think that it was a definite positive step in the right direction last night.
Yeah, and Jalen Hood-Schifino, there was a little bit of discussion with some people on Twitter last night, kind of a little bit of back and forth between Joel and Jared, which I always love to see. I always love their arguments on Twitter. But Jalen Hood-Schifino obviously didn't shoot as well, and kind of started off showing a little bit of his freshman side of him in the game, but just continues to show great decision making, running the break, because IU obviously wants to get out a lot on this in the games and with this team. There was nothing around the rim when he was coming down the. I think he had a 3-on-1, so he kind of dribbles on the right outside of the arch, hands off to Miller Kopp, and kind of screens his guy in that handoff, and Miller Kopp makes a three. I mean, again, nothing too flashy, but such a great read from him in this game, and delivering that ball to Miller Kopp where it needs to be. What did you see other than that maybe out of Jalen Hood-Schifino?
Yeah, I think that Bethune-Cookman, they're not a great team, right? I mean, we all know that, right? They are a team that did return 5 starters though, so I think that bears mentioning as well. But you look at his shooting last night, and to go 2 for 8 from the field and 0 for 5 from 3, you'd like to. You kind of got the sense that he wasn't feeling it last night. And, coach might be a guy that's saying, hey, continue to jack it up there till you find it. I don't know. But, as we start playing better competition, I think that my one would be, if you notice you're not feeling it, start to rely on other guys. Right. And, but I don't necessarily think that he was forcing it too much. He just couldn't find a shot. So, other than that, outside of that, still, he was contributing in other ways, right? I mean, you mentioned it. He was finding open guys. He was setting screens. He was, his assist to turnover ratio was solid. So I think all in all, it wasn't an awful game. It certainly on the offensive end in terms of scoring was struggled a little bit, but freshmen are going to do that, right? And then you got to rely on others, which we ended up doing. And you look at Malik, and he just continues to be a stud from the field. But, overall, I thought it was an okay performance by him and just a typical freshman shooting performance. Yep.
And shifting over, you will say that his shot is best off the dribble. He's not necessarily a spot-up shooter that's going to be out there, receive it, and do it. He's a lot better off the dribble, just elevating like he can. And that's a very different takeoff. That's a very different feel as a player. Being set there, receiving the ball and going up is one thing, whereas if you're on the dribble, you've got a little momentum this way or that, and your body's used to going up higher in that sense and delivering the ball in a different way. So it's definitely a different feel. And off the dribble, he maximizes that. Speaking of shooting, we'll go on to Miller.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt.
Okay.
No, I was just going to say, and when you think about his style of driving the basket, that's not always easy against a zone, right? And that could have contributed to some of the different looks that he had, right? In terms of, he's not taking really anybody audible per se against a zone. He's trying to find holes and pockets in that zone, and that's a little bit different for his game, and that could have contributed to some of the struggles we saw.
Yep. And Miller Kopp contributed the way we hope he would. And I was hoping going into it that he'd get 7 shots. He got 6 3-point shots and did 4 for 6. Just doing the things that he needs to do, being in the places that he needs to be. The one downside I would say still to Miller Kopp that they took advantage of a little bit is that he's going to get beat off the dribble on the defensive side. That is the one area that needs to work on. But great to see him get up those shots and a high volume of shots. What did you see out of Kopp? Oh, you muted.
I remember I saw your tweet and I'm like, man. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I got you. Yeah, you're good.
Okay. Yeah, I saw your tweet and I remember seeing 7 3-point shots. I'm like, man, that just feels like a lot. But you that was some good foreshadowing by you. I didn't expect for him to get that many looks. In hindsight, I'm really glad that he did. When you start to look at his percentage from 3 on the season thus far, and even including the exhibition games, you have to be excited. We talked a lot about his struggles last year from 3 and what a difference it would make. Even if he upticks that percentage by just a little bit, and he's done that and some. And when you combine, what he's bringing from 3 with Trey Galloway's improved 3-point shot. I mean, you can't help but be excited about the potential of this team, right? I mean, everything. Again, we know the competition is going to crank up a notch, but everything that every box that we've kind of wanted to check in terms of this is what we need to see for this team to be improved, you're starting to check some of those. So the hope is that it carries over. But Miller's just a guy that has seemed to find his confidence. Something we've heard a lot about, right? We've heard coaches and teammates talk about his ability to shoot in practice and about how he can't miss in practice. And now we're finally starting to see a little bit of that translate into gameplay. And if that's something he can continue to carry through this season, man, you can't help but be excited.
And apparently we have his golf game to thank for that. He said in the post game that playing a lot of golf, he saw that Michael Jordan played a lot of golf and had a good golf game, and that kind of centered him and got him emotionally or mentally in the proper space and everything, which is great. Great that he found that. I don't necessarily see the connection per se, but hey, if that did something in his mind to click things properly, that's great. Kind of speaking of the mind, the overall just basketball IQ on this team is something that I continue to be excited about. And one moment that I wanted to share with it is with Malik Reneau. I mean, Malik Reneau for 2. Malik Reneau there was a play where IU was looking to get going fast. Malik got a rebound, gave it to Jalen Hood-Schifino. Jalen starts bringing it up. Malik sees that in the zone, the opponents don't exactly get in the proper position for it, and he sees Trey Galloway's kind of in the corner and his man sagging off of him. He immediately goes, sets a screen for that man, and starts calling over to Jalen to pass it, or signals to pass it to Trey, which leads to Jalen putting it perfectly in a shooting pocket. Trey goes up and hits one of his threes. A great moment there in the game, and just shows the basketball IQ that not only he has, but this team has. And it's an overall theme, I think, with this team, that when you have a depth like we have, it can get toxic quickly because guys can want to prove their worth when they're out there. And what guys can quickly reset to as basketball players to show worth is by making plays themselves and making baskets, shooting them and making baskets, making dunks, things like that to draw the attention and draw the worth. But these guys are mature enough and smart enough and in the right headspace that they play for each other and they play to make each other better. That's such a great place for this team and this depth to be in. What are your thoughts on kind of all of that?
Yeah, I mean, you said it well, and there's one guy I look at specifically that we haven't mentioned a ton, and that's Race Thompson, and I would venture to believe he's probably just fine with that. And it's not like he's played bad. It's not like there's concern there, but he's just not a guy that I think going into the season there would have been this expectation that we probably need to lean on Race a little bit more than we have so far this season. But you're finding it true, and I think you hit the nail on the head because I had the same concern, right? When you have this much depth, how do you keep everybody happy? And that doesn't seem to be a concern amongst any individual on this team, and that's really encouraging to see, right? I mean, everybody's contributing. Everybody seems to be very happy playing basketball. I saw some tweets saying that. It's like, when's the last time we've seen an Indiana basketball team just look happy with what they're doing? And, obviously, winning and this type of momentum kind of cures all, and we'll see how it evolves as the competition stiffens. But I mean, the depth is incredible. The freshmen don't look like freshmen. I mean, they've come in and you mentioned their basketball IQ. It's been I can't remember the last time we've had impact freshmen like this and just look like they belong from not only belong, but contribute heavy. So yeah, it's just extremely, extremely excited about the depth. Just really anxious to see what we look like next Friday against a team that's, when you look at Xavier and where they're expected to finish in that type of environment, really there's a lot of questions we're going to get answered there. How do we look on the road? How are these freshmen gonna, look in a different type of environment? So I'm really anxious to see that. But yeah, right now with where we're at, the bench has just been, you can't really say enough about them. So all good stuff.
Well, and the interesting thing that I keep falling prey to this, and I guess again it's our bias and our expectation. But Trayce Jackson-Davis again continues to have a great night. Finishes with 21 minutes, has 21 points, 9 for 10 from the field, 3 for 3 from the free throw line. We'll get into those stats obviously here in a little bit, but shooting it great, doing the things that he can do. And I honestly think that one miss was on one of the fouls. So would have been a perfect 10 for 10. So he's just playing the right way that he needs to play and takes advantage of this zone. Yeah, we haven't seen him expand his game to shoot those mid-range or anything like that yet, but he's just still doing the things that he can do and contributing and being the all-star that he is, despite maybe us overlooking him and expecting those situations. What are your thoughts on Trayce last night?
I looked up, I was really curious because, I was thinking in my head, I'm like, I feel like I've only seen Malik Renew miss 2 shots all season. I'm like, I wonder what the season field goal stats are. And Malik and Trayce are I believe, I looked it up before we went on air. I believe they're shooting an equal 71.5% from the field season to date, which I mean, obviously, that's going to be a tough percentage to keep up with. But man, it just seems like when they're getting the ball on the low block, neither one of those guys are missing. And, we're going to have to start a Trayce meter or something because he's steadily climbing the all-time list of IU all-time leading scorers. And, I don't know who's next on the list, but I remember looking at the beginning of the season, and if he just scores the same amount of points he scored last year, I think he'd be number 3 on the all-time list. So, there's some impressive names he's going to start crossing for sure. So something definitely to keep an eye on. But he's just been Trayce, man. He's it's interesting. You don't necessarily get that fast start from him, And then you look and, we kind of get into our flow and it becomes a quiet 21 points, right, for Trace. And then you look at his stat line, 9 for 10 from the field, 3 for 3 from free throws, something we haven't talked about yet. I'm sure we will, but, how cool is that to see it? 3 days ago, we're complaining about field goal or free throws and we missed one all night. But, just Trace being Trace, man. And slow start, but to end with that stat line, just continues to be a stud and excited about where he's at too.
Yeah, let's get into the numbers here in a minute. Before we do that, just any other players you want to speak on from last night?
No, I mean, I think you're waiting for that. If you want to start kind of picking at anything, just waiting for that Tamar Bates game. He's 5 points, 2 for 5 from the field, 1 for 4 from 3. If you look at him and Hood Schifino to go, 1 for 9 from 3-point range. I mean, is it reason for concern? Not really when the other guys are shooting so well, but you just hoping to see something click a little bit more on the offensive end for Tamar. And but again, we're 2 games in, so not necessarily anything to be too crazy concerned about. But his stat line jumped out to me a little bit. If I was going to pick at something, I guess it would be his. So
yeah, it's the 4 assists that look really good out of his stat line.
True.
I would say.
See, you keep me honest, Chad. You keep me honest.
No worries.
You always point out, it's more than just the offensive line. It's more than just the offensive. So
and that's the interesting thing with this team is that, again, we make grump and complain about this guy didn't have such a great game or this guy struggled and everything. But I think that's more of a mindset that we have still stuck in our heads from last year, that those guys that we expect good games from, we needed those good games from them to be competitive and to be in the game. But again, a shout out to the depth. There's other guys that are going to step up. If this guy struggles or this other guy doesn't have a good game, that could mean that someone else took those minutes and took those shots and did better than the normal person that we would expect to have a good game. Shifting on over to talk about stats, obviously, again, free throws. I mean, hopefully this isn't an up and down season like we've had in the past where we kind of go, why couldn't we do what we just did? Look what you just did. And now you're doing this. But 21 for 22 from the free throw line. That one miss happened from Jalen Hood Schifino, and I kind of heard an audible sigh out of the crowd when that miss did happen because the fans were keeping track and we're watching that, and we're hoping for a perfect stat line in that sense. Obviously, continuing that shooting is just the 3-point shooting. Being that they were in a zone, obviously it lent for us to have more good looks from 3, going 10 for 24. I feel like it again can improve from there. If our delivery, I think an improvement in, again, the delivery of those passes to those shooters, if they're put more in the pocket and rather than the guys having to step over and adjust and then shoot it, that could increase. But those are obviously the standout stats of the game. Talk to me about those, Martha, and maybe bring up another one or two that you like.
Yeah, I'm to your point, I'm hoping that we don't drive ourselves mad with the free throw shooting, right? Because clearly we're a team that's capable of shooting them at a high percentage. I mean, to go 21 for 22, 95% from the free throw line, clearly it can be done, and clearly this team can shoot, right? So, hopefully we don't follow it up with a performance like we saw, on Monday night. So yeah, it's impressed by that line. It just shows that we're capable of it. I'm not sure we've had a performance like that from the free throw line in some time. But again, you point to that, you point to the 3-point shooting. I mean, you take Tamar and Hood Schifino's struggles from 3 away in this, and then you leave really, really impressed. But it's different guys stepping up. We've talked a lot about that. I didn't have Malik Renew, knocking down a 3-point shot on my bingo card last night. And Hood Schifino knock one down, right? I mean, so it's just it's different guys. But more importantly, it's guys that have the confidence to step up and knock it down, right? I mean, it's having that freedom in the offense to do it. So yeah, just continue to be incredibly encouraged about that. And again, you can start breaking down other stats with how much the bench contributed and how many minutes they played, and almost just having two starting lineups. But we've kind of hit that, beat that horse a little bit. So yeah, I think we've hit all the solid stats that point out to us. So there's really nothing that jumps out, and is concerning overall at this point. So yeah, I think that's where we're at right now.
And another, kind of a stat, but just kind of an interesting fact. IU definitely, I think, stepped up their defense, especially their on-the-ball defense, and that is evident by the fact that BC didn't shoot a free throw until the 6 minute 36 seconds in the second half. And I think a lot of that points towards, the fact that we were pressuring the ball handler, and that was great perimeter D. While, yes, we did have personal fouls, we ended with 18 personal fouls. Those fouls happened outside and not while guys were shooting. So that shows that we were defending strongly, we were defending well on the ball, and not allowing them to get to the rim to possibly even have those. And even if that did happen, when guys were near the rim or in their shooting motion, to have the discipline not to overly defend it and give up a lot of shots to that degree. Another thing that's been very exciting to see, and it's the pace of the games that we have this year. We're obviously playing a lot faster. IU is clearly looking to kind of get out on the break a lot more this year than we've seen in the past, and that's evident by immediately when we see guys secure the rebound on the defensive end. Guys, you already have 2 or 3 guys that are shooting up the court. And obviously that's been emphasized with them. Malik is really good at getting his head up once he gets those rebounds and trying to find the guy. We had a few turnovers, a few overzealous passes in that department, trying to get out a little bit too quick and looking for lanes that aren't necessarily there, which we need to look out for and we need to watch, because against bigger teams and more athletic teams, they're going to be able to get to those passes a little bit more. But I do enjoy that pace, and I do enjoy having X and Hood-Schifino out there. They read those breaks very well. As I mentioned that play earlier when he got Miller Kopp a great open 3 look. What is your thoughts on this pace and how we're moving the ball around?
I think again, it just speaks to the ability to bring the amount of players, the amount of contributing players that we do, the depth, right? And you mentioned Hood-Schifino and X being able to get up and down the court. I think Trey Galloway is really good at it too. I mean, he gets out in the open court. He's just a guy that always seems to know where the basketball needs to be at the right time. And to be able to go from your starting 5 to really not miss a beat and still be able to run the floor like you do with your starting 5 when you bring that second group in, I think it just speaks volumes. And to be able to do that, you've got to have depth, right? You can't run up and down the court and expect to play good, solid defense with, a small bench. So I think it bodes well for us continuing to do that moving forward with our depth, right? I think it allows us to get out and run a little bit more because we can stay fresh and bring in those fresh legs. So I think it's exciting. I think that, obviously bring Geronimo off the bench as well. He's another guy that went 4 for 5 from the field yesterday, but he's another guy that's creative in space and can get up and down the floor quick. So just the ability not to miss a beat, right? It's one thing to start the game like that with your first 5, but then you bring in, you go to the bench a little bit, or somebody gets in foul trouble and all of a sudden you don't look as good from a fluid standpoint. But because we've got that depth and that skill set off the bench, we can continue with that flow even when our first group goes out.
And it's interesting to see this year. It's been great these first games so far, because looking back at last year, a lot of our complaints in the non-conference and the early games in the season was that we didn't give some of the freshmen or the deeper bench that much of a run. They couldn't get out there. They didn't get precious court time. Whereas with the depth that we have, not only with our second unit, but how we've secured and how we've played these games, the CJ Gunn, the Caleb Banks, Logan Duncombe have gotten some decent minutes. And while we do start to get in the tougher games, we still have a Little Rock game, a Jackson State game coming up, maybe even the Miami of Ohio game, although they're a little bit better of a team, that we can get some play from these guys, and that's invaluable moving forward. And I do like what I'm seeing from those guys. They still are very good. They're akin to what we had to deal with in our second unit last year. But they do show that they are freshmen and they make mistakes, but great to see them get out there. What did you see from those guys in their few minutes?
Yeah, I and not, I think as an Indiana fan, conditioned a little bit to always have a pessimistic side. When you start to look at the success of a guy like Malik Renew, the first thing that goes through my head is, man, we better enjoy him while we have him. And and then you start to think about what this team, not to, we want to enjoy what we have in the moment, right? Because it has the potential to be a very special year, right? But you also start to think about what this team could look like next year. And, if he continues to have the season he has, how long is he going to be around? And, what does our front court look like next year? And the point I'm trying to make is you essentially, this team's going to look a lot different. So you hope to find spots where you can get some of this youth experience. And a guy like Logan Duncombe with, who by all accounts is going to be a pivotal player for us in the future down the road in the next year or two on the front court. So you're a guy he's a guy you hope can get some confidence and have some success as points this season. That way he can carry it over to next year. We never know what's going to happen in the portal and all that stuff. But, when you start to look down the road and in the future, you want to get these guys some looks because, we have a very experienced team with a combination of players that are going to graduate and potentially go pro. So you want to find a way to continue to try to build on that depth, to get some of those young guys some looks. And I'm glad we found those opportunities. And I'm glad that these guys are taking advantage. They seem to be coming in, taking full advantage, scoring when they get looks. So you look at Logan last night, knocked down a couple shots. CJ Gunn continues to not be afraid to pull the trigger ever. So, it's encouraging to see that they're able to come in and, again, not necessarily look like freshmen and sophomores, but guys that are ready to come in and contribute.
Yep. Speaking of that future and everything too, I think this is a good point to say as well, that of welcoming, we can finally officially say it because the two guys signed their letters of intent, but welcome to Gabe Cupps and Ja'Kai Newton to the IU family and everything. And it's going to be very interesting to see them plug into this team next year and everything. And as we've seen that second unit that's gone in for us. And they are an exciting second unit. And the only one that we project, now who knows, you never know, like you said, project to lose out of that second unit that we've seen in there is Jalen Hood-Schifino. And can Gabe Cupps come in and step in and fill that role? That's a lot as a freshman, but very interesting to think about the future of this team. And we're just at the start of the season, so we shouldn't go too deep into speaking of that and counting those chickens before they hatch. But just an exciting game to see, not only the play on the court, but what I really liked seeing was the smiles on the guys' faces, because it's fun for them to, again, they're enjoying these games and they're liking what they're doing. They're liking each other and they're having fun. And I think that speaks to what I teased earlier of this season has started off exactly how I would have hoped it would. Again, we had those exhibition games that we were able to get a lot of play out of different combinations. A lot of different guys played with each other. The season opener, there was some struggles, and I was happy to see those struggles and see those guys have some hard times and have some things to have to make adjustments on and have to lock in. And then the game last night, have that game where you're shooting well and you're having fun and you're enjoying it and you're doing good things. Now we've got a pretty good extended time off before we play again a week from now on November 18th against Xavier. And you hope that the guys keep that energy and keep that excitement. That's a good amount of time to have off, and you can relax and kind of fall off. But your thoughts on kind of all of that.
Yeah, I think that was the one thing when I was looking at the schedule, and you think about that first tough road environment. I was like, man, I really wish that we had one game in between, right? Maybe we played early next week, Monday or Tuesday of next week. Just especially now when you look at how we've come out of the gate and kind of found a little bit of a groove here early on, and just look really well. You hope that 8 days off isn't going to get anybody rusty or cold, or all the, again, going back to the pessimistic viewpoint. I think this team is mature and advanced enough that I don't necessarily have that expectation, but still the thought goes through your head. Any team that has that amount of time off, it's like, okay, you lose that amount of gameplay. Are we going to come out a little bit slow, a little bit rusty? And you do that on the road sometimes, that it can be a tough ask to come back in a tough environment. So, you just hope that the guys stay fresh. But you look at the schedule and there's still, you get past that Xavier game, like you mentioned, still more opportunities for this team to continue to find its groove. But you get past Thanksgiving, and again, it gets really real quick. We're not used to having this type of preseason schedule, so there's going to be all types of opportunities to see what this team's about, for this team to get better. But again, I think the other thing that I think we need to be prepared for is every good basketball team goes through some ebbs and flows. This team's going to, find a bump in the road at some point. And I think as fans, we should expect that at some point and maybe not overreact, like we sometimes do as IU fans. And I'm more talking to myself, because I know this is a little bit hypocritical coming from me, because I can be a little bit, reactive. But, when you've got a team with this skill set, and when you play this many games and the schedule that we have, there's probably going to be a game that we trip up, and we've got to be ready for that. But it's all about, I think, how this team bounces back, and continues to grow. And I think we're going to be all that better down the stretch because of it.
Yeah, and this may be a little macabre of me, but and I don't wish upon it earlier, but I am excited to see how this team reacts to that kind of adversity. Because like you said, it is going to happen. It is going to hit. And again, having the depth that we have and the leadership that we have at so many different positions, and the veterans that we have, there are going to be guys that are there to step up and take care of things when adversity happens. And hopefully that translates to getting over that hump when we hit those humps. I think it's a little bit easier. Anyone that's done any Tough Mudder or Gladiator games, those different runs and everything, it's a lot easier to get over that hump or that hill or that wall if you have fellow teammates that are helping lift you up and can carry some of that load and deal with it for you. And that wasn't necessarily the case last year when guys were injured and a few guys were out and we were struggling. It was harder to get over that wall. But I think that we have a lot more personality and a lot more skills in different areas that we're going to be able to lift ourselves over that barrier and everything. So just very exciting to keep things going. Go ahead and give me your closing thoughts on this game.
Yeah, I think we've touched on everything. Again, I just go back to the fact that we've had some conversations, some shows leading up to the season, and now a couple shows after the exhibition games. And when we start talking about, and even back to our Twitter spaces, when we start talking about each position and really what we like to see or what we hope to see, and, what needed to click for this season to potentially be a really, really solid one. And it'd be hard pressed to find a box thus far that we haven't checked, which I think is really, really encouraging. And again, we played 2 games against 2 inferior opponents. You get all that, right? But still, when you look at the way we've come out of the gate, we've struggled against teams like this in the past. So for us to come out, and leave no doubt and check those boxes, the freshmen looking like they have, the veterans looking like they have X, to be able to kind of get over the hump with some of those challenges. And, obviously it's early, but we just continue to check those boxes. And I think it's got everybody excited about where we're headed. And I think the real test comes next Friday. So excited to see how this team, performs on the road, but you can't help but be a little bit giddy about what we've seen thus far. Yep.
Just very exciting, very energetic. Hoosier Nation remember this feeling, be excited about this feeling, continue to support, but remember to stay there and supportive as we go on. And hey, also a shout out to the students. Seems like they've been showing up and everything, and getting in there, and kudos to them on these types of games. It's only going to mean that it's going to be even more electric when we have even more difficult games in there and everything. And alumni and everyone else that's there, step up as well to that same energy, and let's protect this home court, and let's do things when we're outside of home court. Obviously, Indiana travels, and excitement within the program brings those people out that live in those areas of those away games to come to those games. So if they are coming to somewhere that you live, go to the game. Go to see this team, because this is a special team. This is a once in a few years type of team to enjoy, and let's enjoy this ride as we continue on and move on this year. So that's going to do it for this edition of Hoosier Morning After. Thanks for listening, guys. Remember to like and subscribe to the YouTube channel there, and follow me and Martha on Twitter. There you can find out when we're going to go live and everything. Also, don't forget to go to HoosierTicketProject.org and donate those tickets. Such a great situation they have going on there, getting people to their very first Indiana game. Special thanks, as always, to Bob Thompson for producing the music you hear on the show. We'll be back again live after the game on next Friday. Very excited to see this game and see this team face some adversity going in. But that's going to do us for today. Go out there, have a wonderful day. Again, happy Veterans Day to all our vets that are watching and listening. Go out there, have a wonderful day, and as always, go Hoosiers.